Picture this. Somewhere in Canada right now, one landlord is lying awake at 2 in the morning because their basement tenant's pipe just burst, while across the country, another landlord is sipping coffee on a patio, completely unaware that rent for 12 different units landed in their account this morning without them lifting a finger. Both of these people technically hold the exact same title, landlord, and yet their lives, their stress levels, and their relationship with real estate could not be more different. Today we're walking through exactly what life looks like at every level of being a landlord in Canada, from the accidental first-timer all the way up to the professional portfolio owner, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what changes at each stage, and what nobody tells you before you get there. Welcome back to Canadian Finance Hub with James. If you're new here, this channel breaks down money, real estate, and wealth in Canada in a way that actually reflects reality, not the glossy version you see in real estate seminars promising overnight riches. Today we're doing a full walkthrough of landlord life at every level, because owning rental property in Canada sounds simple from the outside, but the actual experience shifts dramatically depending on how many properties you own, how you manage them, and how prepared you actually are for what comes with them. Let's get into it. Level 1 is what I call the accidental landlord, and this is far more common in Canada than people realize. This is someone who didn't plan to become a landlord at all. Maybe they inherited a property, maybe they couldn't sell their old home before buying a new one, or maybe they moved in with a partner and decided to rent out their old condo instead of selling it in a slow market. At this level, there's no real strategy, no spreadsheet tracking cash flow, and often no proper lease review before signing. The accidental landlord usually finds out the hard way that being a landlord involves far more than just collecting a check every month. A late-night call about a broken furnace feels like a genuine crisis, because there's no system in place, no property manager, no backup plan, just one overwhelmed person trying to figure out tenant law on the fly while still working their regular job. Level 2 is the intentional first-time landlord, someone who bought a rental property on purpose, usually a condo or a small house, with the explicit goal of generating rental income or building long-term equity. This is where things start to feel more organized, but the learning curve is still steep. At this stage, most landlords are self-managing everything, screening tenants themselves, handling repairs themselves, and learning the hard way about things like the Residential Tenancies Act, proper notice periods, and how difficult it can actually be to raise rent or handle a problematic tenant in certain provinces. Cash flow at this level is often razor-thin once you account for mortgage payments, property tax, insurance, and maintenance, so a single vacant month or an unexpected repair can genuinely disrupt someone's monthly budget. Emotionally, this level is a mix of pride and anxiety. Pride because you're building something real, anxiety because you're still learning the rules while real tenants and real money are involved. Level 3 is the seasoned single property landlord, someone who has owned their rental for several years and has finally built systems around it. By this stage, you've likely been through at least one bad tenant experience, maybe a late payment, maybe a difficult move out, and you've learned from it. You now have a proper lease template, you know exactly what questions to ask during tenant screening, and you've built relationships with a plumber, an electrician, and maybe a handyman who can respond quickly when something breaks. The property itself often starts generating meaningful positive cash flow at this stage too, because your mortgage balance has decreased while rents in your area have likely increased over the years. This is usually the point where landlords start seriously considering whether to buy a second property, because they've proven to themselves that they can actually handle it. Level 4 is the small multi-property landlord, someone who now owns 2, 3, or 4 rental units, sometimes in a duplex or triplex, sometimes scattered across separate properties. This is where landlording starts to feel less like a side project and more like an actual part-time job. The spreadsheet becomes essential here, tracking multiple mortgages, multiple tenants, multiple maintenance schedules, and multiple lease renewal dates. Many landlords at this level start using property management software, even if they're still self-managing, simply because keeping everything organized in your head stops being realistic. This is also the stage where landlords start feeling the emotional weight of scale, because now if something goes wrong, it's not just one tenant relationship at risk, it's several simultaneously, and juggling all of them while still working a regular job becomes genuinely demanding. Level 5 is the portfolio landlord. Someone who owns 5 or more properties and has usually made the decision to bring in professional property management for at least part of their portfolio. At this stage, the landlord's role shifts from hands-on repair coordinator to something closer to a small business owner. Financing becomes more complex too, because Canadian lenders scrutinize additional rental property purchases much more heavily once you already own several, often requiring larger down payments and stress testing your overall debt load more aggressively. The upside is that rental income at this level can genuinely replace a full-time salary, and many portfolio landlords describe this stage as the first time real estate started to feel like true financial freedom rather than just a side income stream. The downside is that with more properties comes more exposure to market shifts, interest rate changes, and regional vacancy trends, so portfolio landlords need to think far more strategically than someone with a single rental. Level 6 is the professional or institutional style landlord, someone who owns a large number of units, sometimes through a numbered company, sometimes through partnerships, and treats real estate as their primary business rather than a side venture. At this level, almost everything is systemized. Professional property managers handle day-to-day operations, accountants handle the increasingly complex tax situation, and the landlord themselves spends most of their time on strategic decisions, financing structures, acquisitions, renovations, and portfolio-wide planning. Interestingly, landlords at this level often report significantly less day-to-day stress than landlords at level 3 or 4, not because owning more property is inherently easier, but because they've built the systems and teams necessary to remove themselves from the daily operational grind entirely. Here's the important pattern that connects every single one of these levels. Almost nobody starts at level 5 or 6. Every professional landlord in Canada that you see today almost certainly started as an accidental or intentional first-time landlord, made plenty of mistakes along the way, and slowly built the systems, relationships, and financial cushion needed to move up one level at a time. If you're currently at level 1 or 2 feeling completely overwhelmed by your first rental property, understand that this stage is temporary, and that the chaos you're experiencing right now is simply the tuition you pay before things get more manageable. The landlords who eventually reach level 5 or 6 aren't necessarily smarter or luckier than everyone else, they just stayed in the game long enough to learn the lessons that only experience can teach. It's also worth being honest about something most real estate content online doesn't mention. Being a landlord in Canada right now comes with real regulatory complexity that varies significantly by province, and rules around rent increases, evictions, and tenant rights have shifted considerably in recent years.